One of the biggest problems that has come out in this last few years has been the achievement gap. Poor children, minority children, do not perform well on tests. Oh, duh. When the tests aren't written for you, when they're written about you, when they're written for someone else, how would you expect to perform? This is an argument that is old as I can remember. When I was in high school, they came out with a test called the bitch test. I don't know if you remember this or heard about it. But one of the questions is, what is an alley apple? How many people here know what an alley apple is? Okay, you don't know what an alley apple is because you didn't grow up in a certain area. An alley apple is a half a brick, and it's used as a weapon. But a lot of people wouldn't know that. But if that were the intelligence test that you were taking, how well would you do? Not particularly well. I remember taking an intelligence test when I was a child, and one of the questions was, what is straw? And the choice you had were like the feather bed in a manger or something you sip through. Well, if you were an urban child, you might think the cup, that something that you sip through, and you would lose points. One of the other questions is fill in the blank, cup and. Well, if you don't have cups and saucers and you drink out of mugs, then you don't know what goes well with that. However, you're then now told you're not smart, you're not intelligent. So what we have now is a system of fair metrics because people have gone out and they've come up with these exams that they have put through all kinds of validity factors, and now we have exams that tell us you're failing. You're failing, and we have to close your school. So in Chicago, we had a bunch of school closings, and there was a big discussion about it. Dodge, Terrell, and Williams were the first schools to go. What's interesting about Dodge, Terrell, and Williams is these are schools that are in a perfect triangulation for where Mayor Daley wants to reorganize the housing patterns for the Olympics of 2016. A lot of people don't know that, okay? So they went through and they just went and attacked a lot of schools in the mid-south area of Chicago. They were on the list until a community organization said, no, we know what you're doing and stop. That organization is COCO, which is the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. COCO, which you may have heard of because it's been around for 100 years, is part of the grassroots education movement, GEM, which is what is part of CORE. So what makes CORE a little different? I'm going to do a little quick here aside. CORE is a caucus of the Chicago Teachers Union. But the difference between CORE and every other caucus in the Chicago Teachers Union is that, A, we believe in real democracy and transparency and accountability. I know, those are words you guys know a lot about. We are the only caucus that has elected leadership. Everybody else just elects themselves king and queen of the caucus, and then they go out and spew. But one of the other things that we're interested in is real partnerships with community, with parents, and with students, because we know we cannot do our jobs if all three of these don't work in some sort of synergy. So, what's really going on behind Renaissance 2010 and now Renaissance 2015 is a movement on the part of the Civic Committee headed by Eden Martin, who has decided that they know best what works for education. Now, these are the same people that have just driven the economy of this country into the toilet, but now they know best what's going to work for education. What we say at CORE is, no, you don't. Get your hands off of our public schools, because we believe in publicly funded public education, not publicly funded private education, which is what charters, contracts, turnarounds, whatever they're calling them this week, really is. So the question we always hear is, well, you know, you union types, you're always protecting bad teachers. You're protecting bad teachers. So we've got this boogeyman of teacher as I don't care person that's just collecting a paycheck and going home, beating the kids out of the parking lot every night. But we all know that that is so far from the truth. And if teachers are leaving early, that's because they're on their way to either second jobs or they're going to school to try to increase their capacity as teachers. We also know that there's an attack on veteran teachers. Why? Because we cost more. Those of us that bought into the whole thing get educated. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm nationally board certified. I bought into all of that. And if they could cut me, they would immediately. But the problem, again, goes back to what was always the underlying problem here. Look at the Board of Education. The Board of Education is full of people that work in banks, people that work in capital management, Aerial Capital Management, Banco Popular, the former LaSalle National Bank. These are all companies that have people sitting on the Board of Education of Chicago Public Schools. We have not had a superintendent for many, many years, since before Paul Vallis. Why? Because we need a CEO, the business model. And I hope you understand that children are not widgets. They're not products. The issues are, who wants to control the schools and why? Well, I'm going to tell you a secret. Edu-business is the last bastion of public funds that the privatizers want to get their hands on. Don't think for a minute that that's not what underneath is. Do you think for a minute they care about the poor minority children that populate the city of Chicago? They do not. Unless they're being trained to fulfill some sort of service positions for them in the future. So we need people that can come to work in the 21st century, but they're not testing. Think about this, and I know Noreen is going to speak to this later. They don't test critical thinking skills.